Okay, so let's talk about this movie's plot to begin with. Now, this is the more I think about it, the more familiar this plot sounds like. So, this is Tom Cruise is this time not up against an individual. Yes, there's an individual that represents the main villain, but he's up against a sentient AI that's gone rogue. The movie opens with this insane, like hunt for Red October like sequence, which I totally loved, and then you have the Ethan Hunt moment, and then you obviously have the cut credits. But the antagonist of this film is primarily this AI that's gone rogue and that's threatening to fuck around with government secrets and basically cause havoc, right? And uh,
Yeah.
the whole point is for them to have to get to the AI and shut it down before things go awry, or more so than it already has. And the more as I was sitting in the film, and I remember I turned to Rohit and I said, "This is the plot to Westworld 3," but obviously it's dumbed down for like a for the average audience. The more I thought about it, the more I was like, okay, this is the plot to Age of Ultron, because this is kind
Yeah,
of
it's
very,
exactly. This is the Age of Ultron.
yeah, this is very much Age of Ultron. And I was like, okay, fine, I'll go along with this Age of Ultron featuring Tom Cruise minus the rest of the Avengers, and which is an impressive feat because Tom Cruise managed to hold your attention longer than a cast of like 6 to 7 different characters with different personality traits. Now, the film, I have been very vocal about my feelings about this movie on social media. I did not like it. I don't think it's a bad movie. I think this movie is hamstrung by several factors, some of which is in their control and some of it which is out of their control. Now, I went and did my research, and they wrapped up principal photography on this film in February of 2021, which puts filming smack bang in the middle of the pandemic. The amount of editing cuts that happened between conversations between certain characters got really jarring. And I turned to Rohit and I turned to everyone who was sitting with us and said, they're not in the same room, because
Yeah.
it became very obvious that none of the characters were in the same room, and naturally you have to like make do with what you have, but that didn't necessarily translate well. And more than anything else, because of the plot of the film is so, it's difficult to understand. It's not a concept that the average individual will jump onto quite easily. So Ving Rhames' character is tasked with doing a lot of exposition for the audience in the earlier part of the film, and it gets really tiresome. Gets really cumbersome, and you're just like, this is not this is taking me out of the experience. And then when eventually the action set pieces do kick in, and they are phenomenal, I will talk about them in the latter half of the review. They're great to watch. They're wonderfully pulled off. It's just that the story part of it for me was a bit of a letdown, and I didn't really enjoy it as much as I would have ideally liked it.
I actually have a different point of view on why I dislike the exposition in the movie. Right, like firstly, I agree with you. The entire movie is like exposition extreme.
Yeah.
Everyone is like just talking concepts back and forth to each other. Right. It's like, hey, if we're all on the same mission, why the fuck are we explaining these things to? Don't we know all these things already? It's like bad exposition when you know it's for the benefit of the audience and it doesn't feel organic in the context of the conversation the characters are having. I would say a
Yeah.
more egregious example of this is when that whole head of, different heads of agencies are having that meeting with Carrie Elves, and
Yeah.
you have Mark Gatiss for a hot second for God knows what fucking reason. He's just in it, says two lines in a bad American accent and bounces, and everyone's just explaining things, right? Firstly, so where I have a different view from you is why the exposition irritated me was not because I felt it was to explain something that the audience could not get on board, but to explain something that the audience already knows. Because as a concept, omniscient AI, which can be malignant, is at least as old as 2015, if not much older. 2015 being Age
Mhm.
of Ultron. Let's say people aren't into comic books, right? Like not everyone is, but mass audiences would at least be familiar with the concept because of the movie. And regardless of that, right, today's world you have nowadays obviously his words have a lot less weightage, but Elon Musk has for a while been saying AI is dangerous. It can get weaponized, it can weaponize itself, it doesn't need to get weaponized, and things
Mhm.
can go haywire. You've had fucking Terminator for the last 40 years. Terminator is
Yeah.
essentially AI getting weaponized or weaponizing itself and deciding to take out humans. So the concept is not new, and people have had enough movies, enough content out there to be comfortable with that idea. In that scenario, why the fuck are you spending so much time with your characters explaining shit that we already understand? And you don't need to understand the nuances of, how this AI is, and like that whole interagency scene. People are like, every security network across the world, this thing, that thing. I'm like, dude, you realize these superlative lines have been uttered by your own franchises, movies ad infinitum or ad nauseum before. Why are you
Yeah.
spending time telling us shit we already know? Just fucking get a move on.
And I think that basically ties into the film's runtime. This movie did not need to be 3 hours. This movie could have been a cool 2 hours, 10 minutes, and
Yeah.
it would have been fine. There's a lot of fat that needs trimming that didn't work for me, and I don't think it worked for you either.
Yeah.
And I and as good as the stunts were, because Tom Cruise and Chris McQuarrie, they're a team that obviously want to give us the best experience when you come to a movie theater. You and I watched this together in IMAX, and the set piece sequences were phenomenally filmed. I would personally say the sequence that takes place in Venice was super enjoyable, and I think that is a bit of a throwback to an old Hitchcock film called The 39 Steps, where the two lead characters are
Mhm.
handcuffed to each other.
People are chasing us.
Yes, they are. You're driving.
This movie brings back some of the things that made the first installment of this franchise very popular. Now, if you go back and watch Mission Impossible 1, which I'll get to, it's a straight up like noir thriller, which uses Dutch angles, which is a shot that's shot below the character's neck.
Eye level.
And it's
Yeah.
positioned eye level. It's positioned above them to heighten tension, create suspense, all that jazz, right? And when
Lots of
used
Dutch
well,
angles
it
in this
can.
movie.
Yeah, and this movie has an insane amount of Dutch angles, so much so that it just almost loses all of its relevance halfway through the film. And especially in that nightclub sequence, where I'm just like, okay, we don't need to have so many Dutch angles. We get the point. Yes, there's a whole fight sequence on this little bridge that's very reminiscent of the first film. Yes, I know we're paying tribute to it. But this movie has transcended so much from its first installment, where it was this noir thriller, to now this full on set action set piece, that the two don't gel. And it got very jarring. It kind of took me out of the movie several times, like I mentioned earlier. And I did not enjoy it. Even the final, the Tom Cruise jumping off the mountain, which had me holding my breath, and is, some would say is worth the price of the admission ticket alone, could not save the 3 hour slog fest that we had to sit through.
Yeah, in fact, on the stunts bit or the technical aspects standalone, yes, I have to agree. That for me is table stakes when it comes to a Mission Impossible film. I am not particularly going to be impressed because a Mission Impossible film is technically adept. I mean, that's exactly the reason I came to the theater.
Yeah.
How are the other things, right? That's what I'm going to judge. But even on the stunts front, again, this might be a controversial opinion, but I felt that Dead Reckoning sort of showed its hand in promotions itself. You
Yes.
shouldn't have made your promotions around your biggest stunt. And I remember there were two big pieces of PR they'd done. The biggest one by far was the cliff jump, which I myself had seen it with 2-3 sets of people. We had played the video when people had come home, and we were, for lack of a better term, chemically altered. We were watching those videos and just laughing about it or whatever, not like getting our minds blown. And after that, having watched it on theater, first of all, I knew now he's on a dirt bike. I know at some point he's going to make the jump. And when that jump happened, I remember in the theaters, everyone got silent and then started whooping. But I was just like, yeah, okay. So, I mean, it happened. Cool. This was supposed to happen.
Yeah.
And the other big PR piece which they released a little closer to the movie was the train fight, where they showed how they created or constructed an entire train which they eventually destroyed because
Yeah.
nobody was giving them a random train to just destroy. So I remember watching that video as well, and those were I felt the two highlights: the Venice sequence or the
Yeah.
Rome sequence. I forgot which city because they were in Rome and Venice, but that sequence was, it was fun to watch, but it wasn't like the big sequence, right? The two big
Yeah.
sequences had already played out in PR. So I was like, okay, so you took out all like I didn't
Yeah,
have
like
anything to
this.
look forward to, so to speak. And even those two, I feel those two big sequences, even if I hadn't known about them, I still feel they were a step down from the ending of Fallout or even Rogue Nation when he jumps into that whatever whirlpool water
Yeah.
tidal where he has to hold his breath and stuff. I feel those two sequences are still superior to anything this movie had. So on the technical front, I would still put this one or two rungs below Fallout and Rogue Nation. Also, shout out to Shia Begum and whoever that black dude with him was. I felt they were great comic foil because all they did throughout the film was just arrive at the scene like 2 minutes later than they should have, right? So
Yeah, it was.
couldn't-
I got massive Thompson and Thompson vibes from the two of them. It felt like
Exactly.
it felt like I was like, okay, so you are this universe's Thompson and Thompson. Like every time you get and then they become friends in the end, and just like, oh, okay, so definitely Thompson and
Yeah.
Thompson.
Like by the sixth or seventh time when they're late, I was just, whenever I just saw their faces, I started laughing. I was like, I can't take this, dude. These guys are nincompoops. And what made it funnier was that their introduction was super badass. Like they're skydiving out of a plane. They're in like
Yeah.
Rangers uniform, and he's giving some instructions: shoot to kill. This. I'm like, you guys are bumbling idiots. Shut the fuck up. So that was fun. But like I said, speaking a little bit more about the points that you raised that you didn't like is firstly, I felt Ving Rhames and Simon Pegg, who have been mainstays throughout the entire franchise, have never been as underutilized as they were in this film.
Yeah.
In any other Mission Impossible film, I mean, Ving Rhames was essentially a loudspeaker, just like
Yeah, for
propagandizing the
exposition.
themes of the film. Yeah, exposition. And honestly, what was Simon Pegg in the movie for? Even if he was entirely eliminated, it would have made no difference to the plot. His whole, what I remember of the movie, his whole role in the film was just to say, hey, we were to ensure that they surrender, in a very serendipitous manner, end up coming to the rescue of Tom Cruise at crucial moments. He's just like orchestrating these impossibly perfectly timed rescues and interventions and stuff, but very little dialogue, no screen presence. So that is something I hold against this movie. They didn't utilize the two of them. So similarly, Ilsa Faust, we won't get into spoiler territory as to what the film does with her character, but again, I feel they could have done a lot more, or they could have done a lot better with her character. Apart from that, coming to the core tone of the film, where the bulk or which is at the very heart of my issue with this film, it feels super corny, it feels super Bollywoody, in the worst sense. Character, when you have lines which are meant to elicit applause or meant to elicit engagement from the crowd, they are not good lines. They're not organic to to the screenplay. These lines are shoehorned. Like I remember twice or thrice in the movie, some character was saying, "If you choose to accept, if you choose to," I'm like, dude, why the fuck are you saying that line again and again? I know it's part of the star. I mean, every this thing it starts. Should you choose to accept? But don't draw attention to it like this. It just felt weird.
Don't run it into the ground, basically.
Yeah, don't run it into the ground. And even character motivations, I felt were very weird. There's this one scene where Tom Cruise says something about, "Hey, I won't put a person's life in danger." Just before the Venice Bridge scene, where essentially says you have to pick between. Right, I won't get into spoilers again. But Ethan Hunt says, "No, I won't do that," and he walks out of the room. And then Ilsa joins him on the balcony, says I even forgot the line, and immediately he's like, "Yeah, I'm okay with that." I'm like, what? Like, so random.
Yeah, it definitely felt like parts of this film were rushed and were clunkily put together. There's a
Yeah.
lot of video game references in this movie now. Like it opens up in the Arabian desert with Ilsa Faust in this tribute to Big Boss from Metal Gear Solid with the eye patch and the desert outfits. And the climax of this movie, everyone was raving about it. I too was raving about it back in 2009 when I saw it in Uncharted 2, because this is it. I remember as soon as the train was falling, I was like, "Oh, come on! Are we not doing Uncharted 2 all over again?" We are. We we ended up doing Uncharted 2, big chunks of it, and that's the thing, right? Like I feel as directors, I mean, of course, as part of the gaming community, you're a very small, a very niche audience, and definitely understand that this plays very well to a larger crowd. But personally, that didn't have the sort of impact on me, let's say, as the endings of Fallout, Ghost Protocol, even Mission Impossible 3 for that matter, had on me. So I wasn't the biggest fan of a lot of what this movie did, but would I recommend that you go watch it in the theater? Absolutely, because a lot of these films don't get made enough, and there is and I think you and I are probably in the small minority of people who have not liked it. This movie is currently at 97% on Rotten Tomatoes. It is getting rave reviews from a large audience. So I would always recommend you go check out a film for yourself and form your own opinion on it. But for the both of us, surprisingly, we didn't like it as much as we thought.
I think it was also because you and I went in expecting a Fallout.
Yes, possibly.
Or a Rogue Nation.
You and I both saw the reviews, and we saw everyone talking about this film. And I think leading up to it, there was only one person, and it was somebody who we knew personally, who said they didn't like it at all. And that was the only time I was like, okay, probably he and I have disagreed on films in the past vociferously. So this could have been another one of the scenarios. But no, he was bang on the money. There are a lot of the issues that he had in the movie, but a lot of the issues that I had in the movie. And when we walked out, I was kind of disappointed that it had come to this. But it's still a good time. I would recommend you go check it out for yourselves. And like I said, form your own opinion on it. And that's all I have to say.
One more nice thing about the movie that we didn't shout out, given that you were talking about it being a great theater experience, the background score is fucking a banger. Like, I don't know how you pronounce his name. Lorne Balfe, right? Yeah, the E is silent, right? E's are silent. Lorne Balfe has just killed it in this movie. And especially in an IMAX theater, it was just like bone-shakingly loud in the nice way. I'm not saying it was
exactly,
jarring. It was just like, whoa. It was just like in the moment. It was damn good.
Yeah.
That was another high point of the film, must say.